So we will move on to our next speaker now, Craig Symonds, who will be discussing exploring Mexico's stingless bee, a photographer's perspective. So welcome, Craig.
Hello, everyone. I'm Craig Symonds, and today I'll be giving my presentation, Exploring Mexico's Stingless Bees. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to York University and the BC for inviting me to speak with you all today. It is an honor to participate and share my photography with such a distinguished group of bee researchers, scientists, and experts. Before I begin, I would like to say that this slide deck is an ArcGIS story map. It's okay to share or take screenshots of the presentation, and I will provide a link to the story map so you can check it out for yourself if you wish after it's over. Some background knowledge about me. I've been a photographer for about 10 years, and a few years ago, I found my way to beekeeping, and through that, I became hooked on photography of wild bees. I couldn't stop reading about them, and I started watching York BC videos and webinars. I was inspired, and I just needed to know more. So when I had the opportunity to visit Oaxaca, where I knew stingless bees could be found, I jumped at the opportunity. I found myself in Huatulco. I've heard it described as like Cancun in the 90s. It's a beautiful place, famous for its bays and beaches. But Huatulco is not a specific town. It is a large government-planned resort area emphasizing sustainable tourism and environmental protection. The land is divided up so that 70% is set aside as a protected zone, mostly in the national park. One of the most important things to learn about stingless bees in Mexico is that it has always been rooted in the traditions of the indigenous people. Oaxaca is the state with the highest variety of stingless bee species, with 35 of the 46 found in Mexico. Huatulco's environment changes dramatically depending on what time of the year you visit. I visited in the dry season. Before I arrived, I was hoping it would be easy to find beekeepers raising stingless bees. Unfortunately, I was unable to find anyone in Huatulco that knew anything about stingless bees. Thankfully, before I arrived, there was a photographer named Diana Caballero Alvarado, and she reassured me to just find some flowers and hope for the best. She contributed quite a few images to the publication that is my first reference at the end of the presentation, and I'd highly recommend anyone interested in learning more about stingless bees in Oaxaca to check that out. The first place I found bees in Huatulco was in Santa Cruz. It is a small beachside area that is tourism focused. It was here that I almost immediately found a group of red-tailed stingless bees feeding on an aloe plant. You could find them every day at the same spot, just taking bite after bite. That first day, I didn't realize how lucky this was for me. It took until my second visit the next year to understand why. Locals told me how Hurricane Agatha had devastated the area and destroyed a lot of vegetation. Coming back a year later, I could see just how much the land had healed. There were a lot more bees. And I quickly discovered that the best place to find bees is not in gardens, but more like on the side of the road, or like in weird plots of land that could probably be more described as ditches, to be honest. And it was there that I found some black, slender, stingless bees. One of the names in Spanish translates to white wing. Something to remember that stingless bees and eusocial bees in general are pretty rare. So even though I wasn't finding a lot of bees necessarily, I was very happy to find the ones that I did find. And just down here, you can see some street view locations of where I found some of the bees in Santa Cruz for people that want to look at the story map after. And so next place is Cacaluda Bay. It is a beautiful nature trail with no road access once you get there or phone service that leads to a secluded beach, and it's just filled with biodiversity. There, I spent time stalking some cactus flowers, waiting to see who would show up. but I'm glad I didn't spend too much time there, because I would go on to discover a nesting site of the red-tailed bees during my second year visiting. And through this, I discovered the biggest insight I had photographing stingless bees in Mexico. Is that you can't expect to get it perfect the first time. When you're in a new environment with a new species, you need to be patient. Like, for example, you could take notes on how the sun looks at that exact site at specific times of day and come back later. But if you're only there once, that's all you have. Or you could try to figure out what kind of behavior disturbs the bees, or if they're peaceful, and you don't need to be so worried about them, like, getting at you. But the point is, some species are more sensitive to sounds, and others are more sensitive to sudden movements. Some are so skittish and afraid, the only way to see them at all is to notice them when they fly away, and then just be patient. I bet you if you wait about 2 minutes, they'll come right back. The main point is you need to just keep shooting, take lots of shots, be patient, keep trying, and come back again if you can. Just don't expect to get it right the first time. And for those curious, red-tailed honeybee honey is not very good, apparently. It is not cultivated. They do a messy job. They mix the pollen in right with the nectar. I was a bit disappointed when I learned that. And so there's another street view of where you can find Kakalutta Trail. Once you get there, you're kind of just in there for a while. And so the next place is called Hagia Sophia Botanical Gardens. It's located up in the mountains, not far from the beaches. It's a combination fruit orchard and ecotourism destination. In a conversation with one of the owners, Ricardo, it became clear that preparing for the future involves addressing the coming water crisis in Oaxaca. He says it's hard to predict what the area will look like in even 10 years. Lots of people here already rely on expensive water truck shipments, especially in rural areas, and it will only get worse as hurricanes continue to damage infrastructure. It was here I found a Melipona yucatana bee. Sadly, a honeybee came in and scared them off. As I mentioned, awareness about stingless bees in Huatulco was relatively low. As I started talking about them with Ricardo, he seemed very interested. It made us wonder if stingless bees could be cultivated to provide a better alternative to the pollination services offered by honeybees. It had us thinking about how honeybees need more water than the native bees. According to one study, cultivating stingless bees could play out similarly to how bumblebees are cultivated in greenhouses, particularly in regards to their buzz pollination. But of course, more research is needed. If we do start to manage stingless bee colonies for this purpose, we must do it responsibly. When I was reading about stingless bees, it was brought to my attention the story of Dr. Warwick Kerr. He studied stingless bees in Brazil in the 50s and then later on in Africa. His work led the Brazilian government to make a request for him to import some honeybees from Africa. Unfortunately, back home in Brazil, a visiting entomologist accidentally let them out of their quarantine and thus created the killer bees problem. Dr. Kerr was deeply troubled by the killer bees, and when asked if he would do anything differently, he said, "I would have left the bees where I found them." And so here's another street view of where you can find Hagia Sophia. And with that, I would like to say that's the end of my presentation. And I'd like to thank you all for being here and listening. You can find my contact information on this page and further reading about stingless bees and Huatulco. Feel free to contact me for high-resolution images of these bees or of other bees found in Ontario. I hope my photography can help shine a light, I should say, on the importance of the stingless bees. I hope it can contribute to a larger narrative of conservation and for the sustainability of bees and the vital ecosystem services they provide. Thank you.